Welcome to Dulcimerica.
Let's mess around here a little bit. Does everybody have a capo? Okay. Let's go in the key of G. Just messing around.
No, but your capo is, you don't have it close to the third fret?
It's close. It's almost on top of it.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's right up next to it.
Okay.
All right. So first of all, our scale, once again here, G major, between the third and the sixth frets. And these notes are part of that scale, but the complete scale is right here. Our 1, 4, 5 chords are G, C, and D. G, C, and D. So G we can get by open. We can make it a full G by hitting at the 5th fret. The 4 chord is going to be 6 and 4. The 5 chord is going to be right next to the capo. It's 505, 404, sorry. Some other chords of interest, since we're doing G, C, and D, would be this G right here, 5, 6, 7, and vice versa. Also D, 4, 5, 7. We got 6, 6, 8, and 8, 6, 6 for another version of C. Now, one of the things I learned from a book called Hands on Dulcimer by Mike Casey was this little spider exercise. And recently I've been using it to do some on-the-fly improv that sounds a lot like classical music. And when you analyze it, it's kind of what was going on with the great composers. These guys didn't have to throw a whole bunch of crazy extended chords at you. They just found really creative ways to handle the simple stuff. You know, very, very simple chord movements and very, very simple ways of running melodies through them. Listen to this. This is just me taking chord inversions, and I'm basically working in slant shapes. And I'm kind of going slant wherever I'm going, and I'm hitting these notes and usually reversing on the, or inverting them like this. And just listen to how cool this sounds. That's just fun. It sounds like, wow, it's like a classical piece. That's just you kind of messing around. All I'm doing is connecting dots. And instead of playing them so that they all sustain, I'm just making them kind of shorter notes. When you're done with that, what this is it's called pivoting. And all you do is you're enabling yourself to get another tack. If you've done this tic-tac-toe diagonal right here, then all you need to do is pivot yourself a little bit to lay it down the other direction. So you can pivot this way and get in there. And you sort of step from note to note, and when you find that note either on the bass string or on the melody string, then you just do a diagonal from there. If you want to not reverse, you can do this. Just come up 2 instead of 1. And then pivot until you can find someplace else to go. Go down 1 and then walk across this way. Come down 2. And then just find little paths that you can walk down. Find the ones that sound pretty. And you don't have to come out of the mad gate either and do like, you do like this. Take your time with it, and as you listen to what you're doing, ask yourself as you pause, which direction should I go to make this sound better? If I take it down, and then where do I want to go from there? Just kind of wander and just listen to what happens. What you'll find a lot of the time is you'll find yourself these little harmonies, and they'll sound good to you. And pretty soon, if you do that enough times, you'll go, well, this note leads to this note well. This note sounds good there. And you'll stop doing so much of the crossways stuff and start traveling on the same string to pick up little bits of melody. That's really simple kind of bouncing around in one little key in G, using mainly chords that are just the same as the one, the key that we're in. So it's a great way to affiliate yourself with the key and also get used to hearing how individual notes from the chord and from the scale, how they work well together. And you're doing it all by yourself. So what's helpful to do is have a little sheet right here that'll have all the chord names on them, and then the notes locations so you can see where you're looking at. So when you do land something and say, okay, what is that? That's a G major, and that's a 7-6-5 chord. So that when you go into the jam or when you go into right, or you're just kind of hanging out with your dulcimer, you remember those things and say, the last time I played this G chord, I had this cool little run that I did that went. And eventually all that stuff starts to stick together. And every single time you like plug in and start playing, you know, it comes back to you, and it adds up. You sort of have to keep with it. But that's one way. You can do the same thing in D. I like doing it in G because the frets are a little closer together, so that you can do some of those spreads across with your fingers. It's a little harder down here, but you can still do it down here as well. You have to live with them. You have to live with the chords. You have to live with the notes. And even so much as sometimes playing, get yourself a neat little, they have these little machines. Actually, you can program it and say, just play F, play G, and just play them over and over again to where it's literally in your head. The best way to develop an ear for that is to start doing the ear training. Ear training, you can get a little app on your phone, or you can go online and just look up interval ear trainer and train yourself to hear the intervals inside of chords. But not really inside of chords, but just intervals, period. Once you hear all the intervals, then you'll stop listening to a chord as this big blob that's G or B minor or something. What you'll start hearing is the intervals in between the notes inside of those chords. So then you can start messing around with the intervals to create different chords. So the interval ear training, and I would demonstrate, but my interval ear trainer is actually videotaping right now. There are apps for the phone. There's one in particular I like. It's called Better Ears. Better Ears is fabulous. I don't know what they're getting for it now, but it's a pittance compared to buying a music theory software program that will cost $200 or whatever. It's something like, I want to say $10 or $15, which is expensive for an app, but not really anymore, for one that does a good job. The reason I like this one is because it's not just a game, it's not just something that, you do this and you learn the intervals and chords and stuff, but it actually keeps track of your score, your progress, and how you're doing with things so that you can look at it and take stock and say, okay, I need a little work on my minor 6 chords, recognizing my intervals and my minor 6 chords. Because it'll tell you right or wrong. Every single time you answer one of those questions, it'll play the interval. It'll play something like, and you have to guess. And it'll give you options. Is this a unison? Is this a major second? Is this a minor second? It'll give you a whole list of them based on what you know. There's also a training feature, so before you go in and do that thing, it'll say, okay, you choose major second, and it'll play major seconds in the key of C, in the key of E flat, in the key of A flat. And like we were talking about earlier, this little interval right here, that is a minor second interval. It's the smallest interval. That interval is going to sound pretty much the same no matter what key you're in, because it sounds like the Jaws theme. But something like this, that's a major 6. A major 6 interval, you start hearing it in different keys and you don't recognize it. You're like, what in the world is that? Something about its placement in the scale. So you get used to listening to that interval and you find little key tones, little things that you can compare the interval to that lets you know that's what this is. Like for me, a major 6 is N, B, C. 4, Here Comes the Bride. Bum, bum, ba, bum. A minor 3. Lullaby, lullaby. All these intervals have a certain tone that has been featured in some piece of music that you can go, this is how I'm going to remember this. This is how I'm going to remember that. It's a lot easier than just going in cold and trying to memorize all 12 intervals. And that's what there are. There's 12 intervals, but those 12 intervals exist in 16 different keys.
That ear trainer was $8.
The ear trainer is going to get you through them. When I first started doing it, I was terrible. I was really terrible. Some of the obvious ones, like the octave and the unison, I was like, yeah, I got this. And the 3, the major 3, do a dear, do a dear. The 5, A, B, C, D, Those are the strongest ones, and those ones I was getting pretty well. But other ones, like the major 6, minor 6, major 7 and minor 7 are really tough. Really, really tough. That's a big interval. That's a major 7th interval. And what good are these, to know the intervals? First of all, you can hear the changes inside of chords. Take a look at this. This is a root, a third, and a 5th. That's what it takes to make a chord. It's a G major chord, G, B, and D. D, F sharp, and A. So you learn to hear that pretty quick. So this is the octave of G. So I can work my way down this little chromatic incline I've got to mine some goodness. If that's the octave, then the half step down is going to be the major 7. Right? This is the same thing. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add the major 7. Play the 1, play the 3. I'm not playing the 5, but I'm playing the 7. That's a major 7. It's a G major 7 chord. If I take this down one more half step, I'll get the minor 7th interval. And now I've got a dominant 7th chord. If I take it down one more to the 6, I now have a G major 6 chord. So that number you see at the end of those chords is usually what note of the scale has been added to it. It was a 3-note chord. It's a very, very easy way to start getting into these pretty sweet chords. Because there's a lot of them without having to retune or anything. They're right there.